I think there's a dance that happens around power. And I think depending on, a person's life, a person's their own baggage. I'm going like this because we
Yeah.
come in with our baggage, our suitcases, and we start unpacking that. So depending what's in there is going to make a big difference in how we see ourselves in using our power. We can learn at any time in our life, but when we can help young people, and I have a lot of hope in young people, showing up and I was going to say fix things, but it,
Mhm.
it's not quite that. It's more like
Yeah,
adjust society, adjust systems, right?
right.
Because we're all caught in all these different systems. So adjust it so that the system is more caring, the system is more human.
It's party time. Woo!
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
It's a little tag on a song I started before we started recording. Listeners don't know that, but yeah.
Mm-mm.
I was just in a meeting with a friend of mine and I was like singing whatever I was doing. And she's like, "Oh, I love when you sing when you're like not doing anything. Make up jingles for everything."
Oh my gosh, I do too. A match made in heaven.
It is. Can I sing you my favorite jingle I've ever created?
Oh my god, yeah, I'd be honored.
This has nothing to do with anything, but if you followed me for a while, you've probably at some point seen my dog Batman. We call him Bubba Bat because he looks like a little bat, and I don't know. It just so we have devised that he is going to have his own sitcom called Just Bubbin' Around,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the theme song is "What's up, little Bubba? What's up, little Bubba? He's a little bitty Bubba just bubbing around. What's up, little Bubba?
Oh my
Bubba Bat."
oh, wow. Wow, yeah, I can tell you put some there's a lot of energy and passion behind
Thank
that. I love
you.
that.
Thank you.
Quite good. Yeah.
Right, apropos of nothing, but there you go, listeners. I make up songs
Ooh.
about my dogs and everything else all day long. So welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer, where we sing about dogs and talk about sociocracy.
Yes.
So, last week we revisited my convo with Ted Rao, and Ted gave us a little 101 about sociocracy. And today we have Francine, who I randomly found on the internet, but I absolutely love those connections. Did anything stick out to you about this episode?
Yeah, so it's funny because I said in for the last episode with Ted, that I originally listened to this episode when it aired, to Ted's episode when it aired
Hmm.
previously. And I think maybe like my frontal lobe snapped into place in between then and now because I feel like I'm finally getting it. Like
Oh.
Sociocracy blew my mind originally, and I think I'm getting there. So yeah, and I think what stood out to me from your conversation with Francine was really just that power is a skill that we learn, and it's not necessarily something that we either have or don't have. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't say power itself is a skill, but the utilization of power
Okay.
is a
Yes.
skill, right? Power just exists. It just is a thing that is there, whether we like it or not. And being able to use it with wisdom and kindness and compassion versus domination and oppression
Mhm.
is definitely a skill.
Okay, perfect. I'm putting the pieces together. Okay. And then Francine was also talking about implementing sociocracy within family systems, which was super
Yeah.
interesting too, because I hadn't really thought about it in that application. So it was really cool to hear her talk about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things that we get into is essentially sort of dreaming how society might change if we raised kids with a sort of like sociocratic ideal that children's voices are important and
Mhm.
they learn that they're important in a very early age.
Mm.
So I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bonkers, but I really do have a lot of hope for the future. I really do feel like there is an opportunity for evolution in the way that children are being parented now versus, how I was parented even, 40 years ago. It just seems so vastly different. And I think if we all cared for one another and recognized the power that we each individually do have, the world really would be a better place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think time will tell because we are definitely seeing more,
Yeah.
yeah, changes in parenting styles, I think for the better, for sure. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see what the next group of adults brings in with their lovely, having been parented in that way. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, shall I introduce Francine?
Yes, I
So,
think so.
okay, so Francine Proulx-Kenzle, I did take French in high school, thank you. She grew up on the Canadian prairies, shaped by a strong spirit of community and cooperation. Guided by her core values of service and connection, she works to build a more caring and inclusive world. Her toolbox is broad and people centered, strengthening organizations with sociocracy and psychological safety practices. So please enjoy this conversation with Francine Proulx-Kenzle. Hello, Francine. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Hello, Sarah. How are you?
I told you like before we started, I like to name hormonal challenges because no offense, but your generation did not talk about perimenopause enough.
No, we
So
did.
Gen X are coming in and we're talking about it all the fucking time.
Well, that makes sense. And keep doing it.
Right?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for being here today. And you're a human that I just randomly found on the internet and it looked like you were doing really cool stuff in the world and you have been so generous to chat with me a couple times and I'm just so excited to talk to you and learn more about you and what you've been doing in the world and weave all the fun things together.
Oh, well, that sounds like fun, yes, because just random. Isn't that interesting? The coincidence, or we know there's no coincidence.
Right?
Why we're here today, and yeah, I'm just thinking about being able to maybe raise awareness or get people to start questioning and just thinking about how life is with us today. I don't know. There's a lot to talk about. I don't know where to start.
Yeah. Well, how about let's start with tell people what it is that you're doing in the world.
Okay. Yes, what I'm doing in the world, well, my aim is to make a difference in the world. And how I do that, I work in two areas. One is with organizations. So I help organizations, and I don't want to sound quaint here. I just try to help them see the best that they can be. So I bring tools and we talk about governance, about performance reviews and try to the psychological safety is very important there. So I work with organizations in that way. And what's interesting, what I think is very valuable. I also work in the field of first aid mental health. And I'm finding that mental health and organizational health is really linked. Yeah, well, let's face it, people live or work in organizations. So if I can make a difference, if I can help people have better tools to help themselves with first aid to help others, that's gonna show up, in their organizations where they work. So, what I like to say is before we can help others, before we can be with others, we need to be with ourselves. We need to take care
Yes.
of ourselves.
Yes. And so just to give a little through line for cuz a lot of therapists listen to this podcast and they'll be like, "What are you talking about organizational health here for?" Many reasons this applies to us. First thing is we are in a systemic crisis right now,
Yeah.
especially in America, and I think that therapists have an opportunity to take a leadership role in helping humanity move to the next level. And just like you said, if we're not with ourselves, there's no way we're going to be able to do that for others. So I just invite listeners, even when Francine's talking from an organizational systems perspective, think about where your clients are coming from. Think about your own workplaces if you happen to work in group practice or community mental health or something like that. So just making it a little like drawing I've realized I need to draw the line better sometimes because it all makes sense in my head, but not always to whoever's listening.
I like what you're saying, Sarah, because, for having been in therapy before too, it's not a matter of coming into someone's office and just have a box around me.
Right.
I'm connected with my family, with my friends, with my work. I've got all these connections. So to me, that's why it makes a lot of sense to talk about organizational health and mental health. With or first aid for mental health. I'm not a psychologist, full disclosure, I'm not a
Yep.
psychologist or psychiatrist or a health professional. I am certified to give training in first health for mental health by the Canadian Mental Health Commission.
Mhm.
So I'm very proud to be able to do that and make a difference in
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm curious because since 2020, the world has gotten a lot harder to be in, and I'm curious if you have seen a steep
Oh,
increase in yeah, and so yes, already.
oh,
You're
yeah.
saying yeah, what are you seeing?
What happened, what we lived through with that pandemic and everything and different parts of the world, lived it differently. But
Mhm.
what I see here in my circles is this loss of control, and
Yes.
poof, all of a sudden your world is turned upside down. What do you do with that? A lot of people don't have the tools for that, or they feel so at loss. So yes, I think there's been a conscientious effort from organizations that provide mental health services, from governments, from the province where I live, to try to raise that bar, to give more opportunities for people to take care of themselves, to learn how to take care of themselves. But there's so much more to be done. Oh my gosh, there's so much more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can I tell you my impression of Canadians?
Tell me what.
My impression is that Canadians care more about one another than Americans do. And
Mhm.
I
What?
yeah, yeah, so that's one reason I wanted to mention it because I'm just very curious because and maybe it's part of it is having, universal health care, which I know is actually not the panacea that Americans like to pretend that it might be, but it's
Mhm.
an option that we certainly don't have. I think I don't and maybe it's just the Canadians I know, they that give a shit about other humans, who knows?
Yeah.
So, yeah, your reaction tells me that maybe I'm a little rosier in my picture than it's
Yeah.
necessary.
Well, yes, probably you are,
Yeah.
because we're all different. It's for sure. I think the culture, we're around. Yeah, this idea of caring. In Saskatchewan, the province where I live, we're recognized to be the province with the highest number of people that volunteer.
Wow,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're like a volunteer community, and
that's great.
probably, and I think there's reasons for that. I haven't checked the research, the stats lately, but from my experience, I lived in a small town for many, many years. Now I live close to a city, and being in this rural area, and I'm sure it's the same all over the world, but when there's not as many people, we look after
Mm,
each other, and we know when someone's hurting.
mm,
That can backfire on us, eh? Let's
yeah,
face it, because sometimes people know too much about us, and we wish that we were more incognito. Huh? There's the word.
yeah.
But I think that this idea of rural service and community and is really impregnated in me and in a lot of people that I know. And my values, when if you ask me what are your values, my values are service and connection.
Yes.
And that can be, yeah, that kind of takes care of a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about mental health organizations connected to those values, right? Connection and service.
Mm,
Because one of the things that I see with therapists often is if a therapist also has the values of service and connection, it can be so easy to overgive and then get burnt out and lose connection with what you actually need. And I'm sure you're seeing that in some organizations you work with. Do you want to share a bit
Oh,
about that?
yes, because what you're referring to is very important. That's the piece about taking care of ourselves before we can take care of others,
Right.
you know? And first aid for mental health that I give courses that I teach is really amplifies that. I mean, it talks about the actions we can take to help someone, but it always reverts back to make sure you look after yourself because if you're burnt out, if you're starting to deplete your energies, um, people well, you just can't show up with all that giving,
Right.
and that can backfire on you. So, and that's where psychological safety comes in for organizations because we talk about inclusion, about being able to have that voice to express that whatever need, and question the status quo, and all those pieces around psychological safety certainly make a difference in keeping people away from that burnout, because
Mhm.
there's a space for them to express what they need, to maybe lift their hand up and say, oh, that's not a good idea, team, let's think of something else. So I think, we have all these tools there. It's a
Yeah.
matter of taking note of them and making it changing the way we do things, changing our habits. And yeah, that doesn't happen by itself, right?
Yeah. I realize people usually don't change without consequences, unfortunately, right?
Mm.
And sometimes that does happen on the organizational level. And what you were talking about makes me think of another thing that I've sort of noticed in the therapist community, and this relates to power, which you and I have connected over, right? You
Yes.
said Power Institute, right? So, and what you're like, what I want to see therapists do is be able to stand in their own personal power and notice
Mm,
what they need,
mm,
speak what they need, while also recognizing other people have opposing needs
yeah,
potentially, right? And so
yeah.
saying what we need doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get that, but there's so much power in expressing it. And what can happen, it doesn't happen, it's happening less lately, thank God. We went through a really challenging period, at least in the Chicago area, with the way people were sort of treating each other on
Mm,
Facebook and social media. But what I sometimes see happen is, in the absence of rooting into that personal power, it's almost like I am going to recreate a power over structure from being in a down power position.
yeah.
And it's like you're trying to oppress the person you think is oppressing you, whether that's actually what's happening or not. And
Mm.
do you see that outside of the mental health field in places that you're working as well?
Yes, and it's a vicious cycle, I think,
Right.
you know? So, I don't have the answer for that, but I think it's, part of recognizing what power is. People have different ideas
Yes.
of what power is, right?
Right.
And we all have our own personal power. I mean, we know that. Yet, do we give it away? How much do we give away? And how much we make room for another person to express their power without us being feeling like we're being stepped on?
Right.
It's a dance. I think there's a dance that happens around power, and I think depending on a person's life, a person's, yeah, their own baggage. I'm going like this because we
Yeah.
come in with our baggage, our suitcases, and we start unpacking that. So depending what's in there is going to make a big difference in how we see ourselves in using our power. It won't happen on its own. I think maybe it goes back to when with children, working with
Yeah.
children, and giving them that space to express and to develop and really try things out, keeping them safe, of course, but
Right.
so that they learn to better gauge, you know,
Yeah.
what their power is. Yeah, it probably goes. We can learn at any time in our life. But when we can help young people, and I have a lot of hope in young people, showing up and I was going to say fix things, but it,
Mhm.
it's not quite that. It's more like
Yeah,
adjust society, adjust systems, right?
right,
Because we're all caught in all these different systems. So adjust it so that the system is more caring. The system is more human.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and if we my theory, because I do see a lot of therapists seem to struggle being connected to their own personal power. And my theory about that is therapists are very traumatized people, whether they would like to admit that or not. We go into this profession because of our
Mhm.
own trauma experiences, I believe. And I'm sure that research would probably back me up on that. And I think when you're a person who has been harmed by a parent or a caregiver, somebody who was supposed to care for you, there's a particular um, desire not to recreate that harm with others. And then, like you said, this misunderstanding of what power is, right? If all I know about power is being harmed by it, I'm going to try to avoid it at all costs. And what I want to see therapists do is recognize that no, 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 we get to use our power for good,
Yes.
but you have to be connected to that power. You can't try to push it away. You can't push it
Mhm.
down. Like we really, I think we as a community have an opportunity to change the world if we can get honest with ourselves about what's holding us back, what's
Mm.
keeping us from doing that. And so what you're saying about, teaching children early, like I have a niece she's 2.5, so she's almost
Oh.
3, and I was watching her, Ivy. You'll listen to this one day, Ivy, sweet little Ivy. She looks just like my husband. It's so sweet.
Oh.
And to watch her be parented by her caring, loving, just wonderful parents, and thinking about my own childhood and just how different in I guess almost 50 years now, like in almost 50 years, how parenting has changed. And
Mm.
I have a lot of hope that children are now getting more of what they need, and they will be less controllable because they aren't controlled as children. I mean, we got a little helicoptering situation, but they really are, like, Ivy gets to choose whatever the hell she wants to wear walking out of the house. I
Mm.
was put in a crinoline dress. My hair was cut the way my mother wanted it to be, right? Like these are things that just don't happen as much anymore. And that is going to ripple into society, and of course, we don't know what the negative effects of that will be later, but it's different, and I
Yeah.
hope that it's better.
I think it is better. I see it in my grandchildren and the way my children are parenting. They're not
Yeah,
parenting like my husband and I did, which
right.
is good. You know, the thing is, we do what we do in the moment with what we have, right?
Yes.
So, and that's all good, but I can see such an evolution in my children. They're in their, gosh, they're in their 40s, and the grandchildren, and I'm having so much fun being a mammy. That's what they call me
Mm. Aw.
because I don't have to say no.
Right?
But truly, because they're self disciplined. They're learning that self discipline
Mm.
with what you were saying about they get to choose their clothes and etc etc. They learn that they can choose, they have options, and if they choose something, they choose, and it doesn't work out for them, they're learning, right?
That's
So
such a good point.
yeah, yeah, so that self-discipline comes into play, and I think, oh, that's beautiful, that's magic. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, let's sit on this for a minute because this feels super important, right? And I'm also thinking about, sociocracy is the reason that I found you online, right? And so I'm thinking about having that internal locus of control instead of the locus of control coming from the outside, which is, I'm certain, probably how you were raised 100%, and me a little bit different, right? In the 80s is, where we were trying to empower children with self-esteem, and that backfired in its own fun, unique way. But I wasn't, there was no permission for me to develop an internal locus of control. That was actually threatening to my family system.
Yeah.
And now, yeah, this feels really important Can we support our children? And I'm not a parent, but whoever is listening, hopefully this is something that resonates with
Mhm.
you too, because that makes a more, like you said, compassionate, humane society. If
Mhm.
I know what my limits are and I can recognize too what might be going on with you and care about that
Yeah.
interaction, that changes everything.
Yes. It's really empowering people, and I like the word empowering because it's got the word power in there, right?
Hmm.
And, yes, and yeah, when you talk about sociocracy in an organization, that's basically giving that voice to everyone. That's giving reminding them they have a power and creating the system or the organization to make space for that voice. And with that comes accountability and
Yes.
responsibility, and that kind of touches the children too. I'm accountable now. I chose this, or I'm expressing this. I'm consenting to this. So if it doesn't work out, well, we'll have to find a way to fix it. But
Right.
I'm part of that. So I'm not going to blame someone else, or it's my neighbor's fault, or you know,
Right.
yeah, yeah. Yes, so that I think it's going to, yes, reduce that victim and wanting to blame, this idea, it's, I'm a victim, everything happens to me, and I can never say what I want to say. So going back to sociocracy, I like to use the word magic, but that's me. It's not magic.
Yeah.
It's a tool. It's work, and it's like anything. You have to have the right tool
Yeah.
to build the. If you're building a wall or if you're building a car, you're going to have different tools, right? So in sociocracy, it's the same thing. The right tool at the right time, and then people feel like I'm making a difference. Because at the end of the day, I think we're all looking to make this world a better place, and making
Yeah.
a difference. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah. For the people who didn't hear my conversation with Ted Rao, which go back and listen to that, who is the one of the co-founders of Sociocracy for All, but would you describe what sociocracy is for people who haven't heard of that term before?
Yes, the famous, what they call elevator speech.
Yeah.
I don't have one. But I can tell you, having for working with sociocracy, to me, it's a system. It's a way of for an organization, for a family, even not just organization.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, I've used it my family, but anyway, it's a way to organize yourself, to govern yourself, to make decisions so that every voice is heard. So those decisions are representing whoever is either doing the work, whoever is in that particular on that particular team. It's representing them, and it's really sweet because I don't know if your listeners know about the sociocratic election.
Probably
That
not.
probably not. That is the most fun thing about sociocracy is when you're choosing, electing. Some people say selecting. You're electing someone for a role, and the traditional way, you either vote. Well, we know what majority vote does, right?
Mhm.
I mean, 51% gets to
Yep.
have their way, and 49% are going, "Oh, darn,"
Yep.
yeah. So they're not
Or
happy.
they're storming the Capitol if you're in the US.
No kidding. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. That's true. And then or else consensus can be very heavy because you try
Yeah.
to get everybody to agree. There's no room to express any objection or etc. Sociocracy is the best of both worlds that way, where you hear everybody's like in elections, you say I nominate someone to be the I don't know the marketing person on my team, and I'll say why. And it's so transparent. Like
Yeah.
it's not hiding, writing on a piece of paper and then people count it afterwards. Everything is transparent. That's where just a little parentheses, people feel more vulnerable maybe
Yeah.
It's a paradox because you're more vulnerable, but it's a safe place, you know?
Well,
So you
if
do both.
you and this goes back to the not being comfortable expressing your power. If you want your voice to be heard, it
Yeah.
is vulnerable to step up and have your voice to be heard.
Mm,
And this piece is what I think people forget because if I can just pull this into my industry for a minute in the group practice space, right? There's one owner who owns the practice and then clinicians that work for them, and I hear a lot from clinicians who are really upset with whatever an owner is doing, and yet there's never any offering of what other ideas do you have?
mm,
Or, like, would you be willing to give direct feedback? And obviously there's power structures and all that sort of stuff
mm,
too. But even when there's a safe space, I see people struggle to step
yeah.
into that position. So again, I'm just going back to like, this internal locus of control and power is so crucial in order to create the societies that we're wanting to have.
Mhm. You know what? What's the answer to that? How can we help others find that power?
Right.
I know I can help people by giving them tools to look after their mental health
Hmm.
and to take care of themselves. I know I can do that. Is that is that enough for people to realize, hey, I've got the power to put in my calendar that I want to do yoga at 3 p.m. That's I want to do that. It's a choice that I'm making. Is is that enough to help people realize that it begins with them? It really begins with them.
Right. Well, I mean, maybe, and this is just how I work. So feel free to reject this if you want. But have you always been connected to your personal power? And if not, what was your journey to really deepening into that?
I like that question. I don't know for sure. All I know is things have happened in my life, and it's I was married very young. Been married. We're going on to 52 years this summer.
Congrats.
No, I know. 4 children and tough. And I've always been a working mom, and I've had the support of my own mother, who's still around, to help me raise my children. And
Mm,
uh, and then things started happening that were touching me. That really touched me. I had a cancer. Okay,
mm,
and I'm here to yay! I'm here to tell the tale.
mm-hmm.
But that opened up a whole eh, how to say, not taking for granted, like this idea of taking things for granted, and you just go, sometimes you feel like a robot, and you just
Yeah.
keep going, and you don't think about your personal power. You don't even start thinking about who you are. You kind of go by, everybody is saying that you are this, so I guess I must be this.
Mm,
Huh? So that happened. So that helped me grow. That happened in my 40s. And then 16 years ago, we had a tragic experience. Our son died of suicide.
oh,
Yeah, yeah. So there you go. That opens up a whole another level, or like if you're peeling an onion, and another
yeah.
piece. Okay, now start looking at myself again, like what's going on in me, and where's my power here? Because I'm realizing that this idea of taking things for granted, I've really learned to be really conscious when I'm thinking like that, because
Mm,
it can really take you in a different path, you know?
yeah.
So so I think I'm not okay, please don't get me wrong. I'm not wishing hardships on
Right.
people for them to discover their power, for sure.
Right.
But just speaking for myself, I'm wondering if I would have just an ordinary, there's no such thing, but if just a run of the mill, nothing tragic, nothing, no event, ta da ta la, there's no chance to grow really.
Right.
So I see challenges, tragedies, things that fall out of the sky as an opportunity, you know, to grow and find your power, find who you really are deep down, and be able to let that so that people can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that. Hmm.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Appreciate the space. Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you and I must be very similar in our desire for that inner work, right? Like I know I'm just wired for that. Like I became a therapist so that I could write off all of the healing that I get to do, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a secondary benefit of the work, but that has always been my primary aim. Truthfully, I went to grad school because I couldn't put my finger on what happened in my family, but I knew it was something,
Mm.
and it wasn't until I went to grad school that I actually, I think, really submitted to the therapy process because I finally trusted that they weren't judging me because my mom was
Oh.
so very judgmental. I needed to actually go to school to trust that someone was going to sit there with
Yeah.
compassion and yeah, I completely agree with you too that adversity and trauma and challenge, like, I mean, I happen to believe that's kind of the point of the human existence is to
Mhm.
grow and we, like I said before, we often don't grow unless there's some sort of consequence and
Yeah.
tragedy and trauma is a consequence of just being
Mhm.
human.
For sure. And I like what you're saying about the trust is involved because I
Yeah.
is that what's missing in people to express their power and to really, be able to contribute in that positive way? Is it because there's something is missing in the trust,
Mm.
trusting what others will accept, that trusting that the
Yeah,
system isn't going to fall on them,
trusting
Yeah.
themselves.
Trusting
Like,
themselves.
that was that if I think about my journey with personal power, self-trust is one of the biggest things, and it's interesting because I do think that I'm a person who came into this world with a pretty large power. I don't know, I'm just powerful. Not intending to, I actually have to try to figure out how to soften it sometimes because I get feedback that I'm intimidating or people think I'm like so certain about something. I'm like, that's not my internal experience. I'm just being like I am. But I think I definitely did not trust myself until a few years ago. And it was absolutely 100% part of my trauma healing journey because my childhood trauma was essentially being told that I was always wrong, always misunderstanding. Why do you feel bad? Everybody else feels fine, that sort of thing. And so to reconnect with my own personal power, I truly feel unstoppable now. And hopefully it's good for the world because all I wanna do is help people and help other people connect with that brilliance within themselves, and it's funny, like, I there's a few things that I'm not very humble about. I am a really fucking good singer, Francine.
True.
I rarely meet people who can sing better than me. A lot of
Mm,
people who can sing just as good as I am, and we have gigs together. But
mm.
I would always like tell my husband. He'd be like, "Oh, you're so good at that." I'd be like, "I know, thanks." And he'd be like, "Oh, you're so humble." And I'm like, "Why can't we have a world where we actually really celebrate the things we're good
Yeah.
at and not like because it doesn't I'm not taking away from Christina Aguilera being a great singer if I happen to also be a great
Mm,
singer, right?
mm,
And just the same, like I was talking to somebody the other day, like, I'm really good at this and I want you to celebrate that with me. And I want to celebrate what you're really good at too.
mhm.
That is a world where we're actually like that, and that's shared power. That's power with where we
Yeah.
can all have this together and that's like real abundance. And because I now feel so connected to my personal power and unstoppable, I just want that more for other people.
Mhm. Yeah, because you know what that feels like.
Right, right,
Yes, yes. Yeah, I hear you because you're celebrating, yes, because there's room for all that. There's room for you
right,
as a singer, there's room for, whoever. You're not taking away. So that abundance and that scarcity, good at here. I'm trying dichotomy on that
right.
exists. Yes, that maybe that comes into play there. Um, yeah, you're certainly yeah. Okay, what am I?
Yeah, yeah. Let's toot your
Uh,
horn.
yeah, yeah. No kidding. Um, I know I'm good at listening to people,
Mm.
and for whatever reason, people appreciate that and they'll tell me that. So I know I'm good at that, and I like doing it. It brings me joy, and maybe that's the key. If it brings you joy, should
Yes.
shouldn't we be celebrating that? You know, all the joy bubbling in you because yeah, yeah, yeah. And oh, I'm good at a lot of things. A
Say
lot of
more then. Toot
well,
more.
okay, here's more. Um, I like to draw,
Oh.
and I'm not in competition with Van Gogh, but I was influenced by Van Gogh, and so I like
Oh.
to do things like that, and that brings me joy. And I have some. My daughter gave me for Christmas a set of paints with paper, cards already folded. So I've been creating cards and having
Mm.
fun doing that, and yeah, fun and joy, and I can give that as a gift because whether I'm listening, whether it's the cards, it's a gift, right? It's
Yes.
a gift that I'm giving, yeah, of myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this, and I know that America's relationship with capitalism is probably not that different than in Canada, but I think we have a very particular extractive sort of flavor about it. What if we had economies that were really about giving and
Mm,
gifting, right? Like I have this, and that's how I feel about my work. I have this service that I want to give to you because I want to give you joy. I want to give you ease. I want to give you power. Like I wanna really help you, and it's I'm not bestowing it on you, right? I am hopefully, like, pulling the thread for you so that you can step into your own whatever joy, power, ease, peace, whatever it is, and that being so different than me selling something to you,
I
right?
know. Oh gosh, yeah, yeah. I definitely, in an ideal world, um, that exchange to me, it wouldn't be something that we count.
Right.
It would be just this is what I'm giving you. Oh, you want to give me something in return? Fine, and just appreciate that. That's utopia right now. But maybe our children are going to see things differently. I'm not much about crypto money, but I don't know about that either. Like, but this capitalism, yeah, yeah, and it creates a lot of pressure. That's how you talk about mental health, people feeling the stress and not having enough money, right?
Right, especially
Or
right now.
especially right now, and I know in Canada the price of food is going up, and yeah, there's all kinds of we have a housing problem too, in the cities we just don't
Mm.
have enough housing, and so yeah, capitalism hasn't worked. You'd think that we would have figured that out right now, and those
Well,
thinkers,
it's working for the billionaires,
true,
so
true, that's kind of poof.
right? Right? Yeah, it was interesting. I was listening to, do you know who Stacey Abrams is? She's probably
No,
very
don't.
uniquely American, but I think she ran for governor in the state of Georgia, and she's an activist and an amazing person. She has a podcast, that I can't even remember what it's called. Something with Stacey Abrams, and she was talking to Joy Reid, who I think used to be a CNN contributor and a journalist and all that sort of stuff, and they were talking about the intersection of capitalism and journalism and how who runs the news stations is really gonna impact how we're gonna be able to get our messages across, and so it's yeah, the billionaires are getting what they want right now, and so why would the system change?
Mm.
We're gonna need some revolution,
And I think we're in this. We're in the midst of it. All the
right?
chaos that's happening in the world. It's affecting everybody. The chaos theory. It
Yep,
needs to happen, and then
right,
the dust will settle, and maybe we can tease out what is better. What is better? I don't believe in perfection. Huh?
right.
No, no, like Brené Brown likes to say, we're perfect in our imperfections. So, okay, I can live with that. But you talk about intersection, there's so many things. Nothing is cut dry today, right? Well, maybe all the time, but I'm certainly more aware of
Yeah.
all these intersections that are happening.
Yeah.
So it really, the complexity of trying to find, live with our power, to be true to who we are, to trust ourselves, to trust others, becomes very complex. And when I said sociocracy works for families, I've used that before because maybe that's where it starts, in the family,
Yeah.
where children, parents. Sure, the parents have a role. It doesn't take away from their role of being the provider, of course, and at the same time work together to make decisions together. If you and not just ask the kids, okay, what do you think of this, or give them two options. Really work together to create a project that belongs to all of them. I'm thinking, to go on vacation, or
Yeah.
maybe there's a move happening. Maybe one of the parents is getting a promotion, and they share that with the kids. And so I think we if we start small and practice that power, that everybody has power, and that we can care about each other and look at the results, we practice that. Hopefully that would come and color, outside of the family, and go into the village, a municipality, the governments. I,
Yeah.
yep, it's going to start somewhere, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
with each one of us.
Right. Well, and as you said, it's also within you, and so that begs the question: how do you relate to the term healer in relation to what you do?
How do I relate to the term healer?
Hmm. Are you a healer?
Yes, I'm a healer. Definitely. Definitely. And hmm, I'm just pausing with that because that's
Yeah.
big, when you
Yeah.
think about it. Yeah. Yeah. Being a healer, someone who can, you know, bring that help to your surroundings, to people around you. And then when there's healing happening, things change, right? Even in ourselves, when our body is
Hmm.
healing, there's all kinds of different things, the dynamics, everything is moving to create that spot that's healed, that place that's healed. Oh, I like the idea of being a healer.
Hmm. I love that because a lot of people push that away. And I happen to believe that we're all healers.
Oh, well,
So it's
okay.
funny. Yeah, a lot of people push it away because they're like, well, I don't want anybody to think I'm doing it to them. But you already have that sort of like sociocratic and,
Mhm.
abundance mindset that no,
Yeah,
no, no, we're all sharing in this, even if I am offering what my gifts to this.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's that connection. Exactly, the connection that we have with others.
Yeah.
And like, the image of the forest, and how all the trees are connected under the
The
earth.
mycelial network.
Yes, yes, there
Yeah.
you go. I mean, that network, really, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. So
Yeah.
to recognize that if there's a bump, if there's something, if we can bring healing just by our presence, by saying a kind
Yes.
word.
Yes.
um we yes, it doesn't have to be, outstanding in whoever's
Yeah.
uh view of that is. It can be so small steps, small little things. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, and
Mhm.
how about the term wounded healer? How does that land for you?
Very well too, because if I'm a wounded healer. I've been wounded,
Mhm.
I've healed, and you know what? I'll probably get wounded again. That's that's
Yep.
okay, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but to know that, if I am wounded, that I'm not alone. I can
Yes.
tap into other healers, other people around me, because I trust enough to tap and to say, "Please help. I need help right now."
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's very important I know there's reticence in a person for not asking for help. They've had a bad experience or they don't want to burden people. Or if I'm in front of someone who's reticent to help, I can certainly just hold that and say, well,
Yeah.
I'm hearing you. Maybe you're not ready, but that's okay. That's okay. Know that I'm here. So yeah. And I'm, just hoping with trusting and hoping that if ever I'm in that position, someone will be able to give that to me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, this hour has flown by and I'm so I know, right? I'm really good at finding people on the internet. That's the other thing I'm really good at
Oh, there
is
you go.
finding new friends. I'm really good at just knowing, like I can just sense when I'm going to have a good relationship with somebody and I feel your heart your heart is so forward and so open and I find you to be so generous and I just really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And I feel so welcome and safe with
Mm.
with your welcoming here. Yeah, you really create a safe space. You're really good at that too. Make
Thank
sure to
you.
celebrate
Okay.
that.
I'll put that on
Celebrate.
my resume.
Yeah.
Well, Francine, if people would want to connect with you, how do they find you?
They come to Saskatchewan.
All right, everyone, we're getting on a plane. Field trip.
Yes, yes. Well, they can contact me by email or by phone. They can go to the sociocracyconsulting.com. I'm there. I work with four other people. It's an international group, and we work in sociocracy. So you can go there. You can find me, and yeah, I'm sure my phone number is around there too. But I'm easy to find. Yes, yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm just delighted to be in space with you and hope we get to do it again soon.
I hope so too, Sarah. We'll see how we progress in our thinking. Right?
That's right.
Yes. Okay. Take care.
You too.